Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Izzowned by Dantonio podcast. Number 5, my name is Mike, and we'll get right into this. We'll start with the Sparty news. Men's basketball defeated Houston Baptist 107 to 62 a couple days ago. Now, obviously Miles Bridges had his really first big game of the year, put up 30 points. It's good to see from him because they're going to need him down the stretch, down in the tournament. They might not need him in the next couple of weeks. Just looking at their schedule, they got 3 laughers, and then you start Big Ten play. So, it's good to see. Maybe he's come back from that injury pretty well. So it's good to see Miles Bridges back. The women beat Quinnipiac 74-55. The women are having a pretty good year this year. They lost to UConn a couple of weeks ago, but everybody loses to UConn, so that I don't really take much from that one. All right, Thursday, men's basketball takes on Long Beach State. It is such a good game that no network has it, so that's how great of a game that'll be. Michigan State, definitely an easy win there. Women's basketball takes on USF in New Orleans, they need to beat teams like USF. USF is a pretty good team in women's basketball pretty much every year, so you got to look to win those games and get resume building wins for them. So now, usually, this comparison to me it's just blasphemous because I have many Michigan fans telling me that Mar, as they call him, is better than Cassius Winston, and I just got to put them in their straitjacket because they are crazy. They're crazy. Let's look at the comparison. Cassius Winston averages 13 points a game. Muhammad Ali Abdul-Rahman averages 9.6 points a game. Cassius Winston averages 4 more points. He averages 3 more assists. Oh, wow. Maybe 1 more rebound. Does Abdul-Rahman 1 more rebound he averages? But look at the field goal percentages. It's not even close. Cassius Winston is shooting 55% from the field. He's shooting 57% from 3, 58% from 3. Abdul-Rahman is averaging 33% from 3. That's right, Cassius Winston is shooting 22% better than Abdul-Rahman from 3. This is a blasphemous comparison. To even say that Mar is better than Cassius Winston it's disgraceful, and it's pure arrogance at its finest. Cassius Winston is by far the better player, and they say, oh, he's a great leader. Oh, is he a great leader? No, really. Cassius Winston got accepted to Harvard. He's a pretty damn good leader as well. He leads this team. He is the leader on this team too. Him and Tum Tum Nairn. Last year he didn't start. This year he's starting, and look what he's done. 13 points, 7 assists, 3 rebounds. He's shooting 58% from 3. That's got to be in the top 10. Abdul-Rahman, he's just been bad this year, really. He hasn't done what people expected him to do. All I was hearing was Abdul-Rahman, he's going to be great this year. His stats don't reflect that at all. And he has made some big shots, but Michigan State doesn't have to make big shots because they're blowing out everybody. So, and it starts with Cassius Winston, the point guard. The point guard is your quarterback of the team, and we see that from him every game. He racks up the assist numbers. He's got to be one of the best passers in college basketball. So, now it's clear Cassius Winston is by far better than Muhammad Ali Abdul-Rahman. Let's move on to top 5 possible new Power 5 teams through realignment. Now, these are just what I think could happen. They're not what will happen or what can happen. Maybe they can happen, but let's just go ahead and start with if the Big 12 disbands. Now, the chances of the Big 12 disbanding are very low, but the Big 12 is by far the most unstable Power 5 conference out there. They're the only Power 5 conference not to have their own network. And you look at the teams, they've been snubbed from the college football playoff more than any other conference out there, it seems like. And, with only 10 teams, They don't get as many television audiences as say the Big Ten or the SEC, and they're in a little bit of trouble. They got to find ways to get teams in their conference that can get them new TV viewership because they're definitely the most unstable conference. Now, am I saying they're going to disband? No, the chances are very slim. But this is a scenario I could see if someday the Big 12 does disband. It would. How about the Pac-16? The Pac-16 would have Texas, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State. They'd move to the Pac-12 to form the Pac-16. Now, they almost did this 4 or 5 years ago, and the plan fell through. But say if the Big 12 does disband, this could be something that could happen. And in the Pac-12 conference, you'd have the West, which would have USC, UCLA, Stanford, Cal, Oregon, basically the original Pac-10. And then in the East, you'd have pretty much all the new Pac schools: Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, Colorado, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Texas, Texas Tech. And Kansas and Kansas State would move to the Big Ten, and they'd move Purdue to the East, which is a pretty easy move. West Virginia to the ACC makes a lot of sense. Iowa State to the ACC. Maybe you'd say, oh, Iowa State is so far away from any other ACC school. Why on earth would they go to the ACC? And really, it comes down to, you got to find new television audiences. That's what conferences are trying to do when they do conference realignment. That is why Rutgers and Maryland came to the Big Ten. Was it because Rutgers was a great team in any sport? No, Rutgers is terrible at every sport. They came into the Big Ten because they would give them new TV viewership. Same with Maryland. And, for Rutgers, what a big success that was. They're making a lot more money in the Big 12 than they did in the American Conference and the old Big East. So, it was a win for them. And but Iowa State to the ACC, it may not make much sense, but West Virginia was in the Big 12, and they're very far away from any other Big 12 school. I can see that happening. How about TCU to the SEC? It also has Memphis. Now, this one's kind of, up in the air. I'm not sure about TCU going to the SEC, but the SEC really needed another team. I don't think Texas would come. I don't think Oklahoma would come. I think they want to stay together. So TCU would go to the SEC. TCU is a brand because of Gary Patterson now, and they're good at every sport. It seems like they're good at baseball. They're good at basketball now, and they're good at football. It would work pretty well in the SEC. And Memphis maybe. Not sure about Memphis. Maybe they add Houston too, but I don't think any conference wants to touch Baylor right now. I think Baylor is on their own right now, and maybe the American would take them, but I don't think the SEC or the Big Ten or the ACC wants to come near Baylor right now, just based off what's going on the past couple of years at the University of Baylor. So let's go to number 4. How about BYU to any conference? Now, the difficulty with BYU is they're like Notre Dame. They have a history of being not in a conference for football. Like for basketball, they're in a conference, but not for football. So, no, it would be hard. What conference would they join? What conference would they join? Talk about the Mountain West, but the Mountain West, of course, they probably gladly take them. But, would BYU want to go to the Mountain West when they can just play whoever they want? And the Mountain West gives you San Jose State every year. No, I think they want to go to the Pac-12. And the problem with BYU going to the Pac-12 is because of their religious beliefs. And they can't play games on Saturdays. They can't play games on Sundays. Sundays. They can't play games on Sundays due to their Mormon beliefs, which could get in the way of some sports activities in these conferences, and that's why conferences have tended not to look BYU's way when they want a new team, and especially BYU has not been terribly successful in football the past couple of years. Last year they were good. This year was a disaster. In basketball, they're usually a good team, but they're never challenged. They're not even challenging for the Western Athletic Conference or whatever that's called. The Pacific Conference, with Gonzaga and St. Mary's, they're never really challenging, it seems like. Besides Jimmer Fredette, But I'm not sure. That's why they're number 4 spot, BYU to any conference. Let's go to number 3 spot, Cincinnati to the Big 12, and this one has been talked about a little bit over the past couple of years. Cincinnati to the Big 12. It makes sense for the Big 12 if they want new television audiences. Cincinnati would make sense, but their sports teams have just not been very good, and that's why I don't think the chances of Cincinnati getting in there are very high. Their football team went 3-9 this season in the American Conference, which is not a good sign. It's not a good sign for Cincinnati to go to the Big 12. So, but their basketball team is always good. I think they're ranked this year, and it's a pretty big school. I'm sure they'd love to go there. They were one of the teams that sent in resumes to the Big 12 last year when the Big 12 was contemplating adding teams. So, possibly this could happen if the Big 12 gets desperate. And another team that could happen is UCF. UCF is another team. If the Big 12 gets desperate, they could go out and get UCF. UCF's pretty good at football, but these are desperation moves for the Big 12, really. If they want to stay at conference, get new television viewership, they're going to need a new network, too. They really need one if they want to challenge these other conferences. Right now, they're not making the amount of money that all the other conferences are making right now. And they are the best basketball conference. They are pretty good football conference. And, but Cincinnati, if they get desperate, Cincinnati's always there. Number 2, this one makes sense. Boise State and San Diego State to the Pac-12. The Pac-12, this will create the Pac-14. Boise State and San Diego State. Both teams have traditions of being very good in football. Of course, Boise State winning a couple Fiesta Bowls is always a good thing. And they once again won 11 games this year, including destroying the Pac-12's own Oregon in the Las Vegas Bowl. So Boise State makes sense. San Diego State, very good this year, very good last year. They're good in football. They upset Stanford this year. That gives them a token to maybe come in too. But if they're going to add one, they're going to add both of these teams. They will. And San Diego State would go to the south. Boise State would go to the north. Television-wise, San Diego State would maybe give them a San Diego area. And Boise State, it's not a big TV market out in Boise, but, there's still a lot of hardcore Boise State fans. There's probably more Boise State fans than there is Washington State fans. And Washington State is in the Pac-12. Same with Oregon State, I would say, is also in the Pac-12. So, Boise State, have they been great at other sports? Their basketball team's pretty good this year. But really, look at their other sports. They haven't been nearly as successful as they've been in football. And maybe that's a hesitating factor for the Pac-12 adding them. San Diego State is usually pretty good at every sport, usually. They have good traditions in basketball, and they have good traditions in football too. They were a very good team this year, and I think it makes sense if you're going to add 2 teams. I think these are the 2 teams the Pac-12 is most likely to add. So let's go to number 1, Memphis and Houston. This makes the most sense. Memphis, very good at both football and basketball. You saw what they did this year in football. They were an interception away from winning the American Championship. Houston, in the Houston market, you can get more fans there, but, Houston, they're successful at every sport. I just think you have to add Houston and Memphis. I think it's going to have to come. And if the Big 12 wants to get better teams in their conference, wants to make it more competitive, they have to add these 2 teams. Stay away from Cincinnati. Stay away from UCF. Cincinnati's terrible at football. And UCF is only good at football. And they were 0-12 a couple years ago. So, Memphis, they have rich traditions in basketball as well as football. In football, especially over the past decade, they've been pretty good at football. Houston has a lot of tradition in the sport of football. They're always very good in the sport of football. Houston would be a great move for the Big 12. And this is not just a TV thing because, they have the state of Texas on lock. The state of Texas is the Big 12 state. But I think adding Houston is just something you have to do. It's something you have to do as a conference if you want to stand up to the other conferences because it only makes sense. Houston and Memphis make the most practical sense of any schools you can add. Maybe SMU would be another school, but these are the two big schools that the Big 12 should add. All right, that is going to be it for the fifth episode of the Izzowned by Dantonio podcast. Everybody, thank you for watching today, and have a good day, everybody. I'll be back on Saturday. I'll be interviewing a fan from the University of Michigan, so that should be fun. All right, thank you, everybody.